Wow, I love it. I love the nook you chose in the house.
It's hard to find a place in this house because there is too much light. There's just an abundance of light, and there are no coverings on any of the windows anywhere. So this was the best I could do. Our bedroom also has less light, but it's not. It isn't very comfortable to be sitting in bed with trying to find a place to put the computer.
Right.
So this is working better. All of my Zoom calls that I do for uh, meetings I do from my office, but there's a lot of light down there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. First, I have to introduce you. This might be my favorite call yet. So this is my stepmom, Susan, who really is like my big sister, and whose birthday it is today. You are my first actual birthday call.
Ooh,
So I'm very,
special.
which is actually what made me think of this whole thing, because I wanted your amazing perspective on life and parenting and what we're doing right now, and this weird birthday party we had last night that was super fun. Yes, it was. So yes, I guess if anyone saw my little post, because I actually did my post last night after the party. So I was wearing my red James Bond dress because for those of you who weren't at the party, sorry, but it was a surprise James Bond theme party for Susan's birthday. She didn't know it was happening. We all dressed up and did whatever James Bondy things we could think of. And I hadn't done my daily post. And so after the party, I went and did, I don't even know what I said. Let's just not tell anyone that I was possibly drinking at said birthday party. And I think I told you a few minutes ago, I was actually really sad when I took off my red dress because I realized the color was making me really happy. I mean, and I have this, yeah, just this weird thing where like I've been paying attention to how I get dressed in the morning and not staying in my pajamas all day. But wow, a little pop of color just made me feel better. Like looking at your shirt makes me feel better. Yeah.
Yes, pink. Pink is good. Bright is good.
Yeah.
I decided it was a day to do something a little outside the ordinary because every day I'm putting on real clothes. It's not like I'm completely dressed down because I am doing a lot of Zoom meetings, but it's pretty casual and it's 2 or 3 things over and over and over again.
Right.
I just want to be comfortable and I want to be warm. It's been a little gloomy in the Bay Area, which has resulted in our house being kind of chilly. So it's socks and slippers and trying to stay warm and be cozy.
Right. Does that mean there's no birthday dinner on the deck tonight?
Probably won't be eating on the deck, but we had a surprise this morning. We had a delivery, an Instacart delivery from Safeway that Danielle ordered. So we have filled our refrigerator in our cabinet again, which is great. We were really starting to run out of some things. But we're going to have a steak dinner with a salad tonight. And we've not had a lot of fresh produce. So this is going to be a treat. She sent lots and lots of lettuces. And I am looking forward to a lot of salads over the next few days.
Isn't that funny? That's what I was missing the most. And we did a Costco delivery, no, we went to Costco about almost a week ago. I just ate an entire head of lettuce for lunch, and that just felt like a big old luxury. And it was butter lettuce, which is my favorite.
Oh, mine too. Yeah. That's definitely been missing. We're doing a lot of more of the staples
Mm,
and it's high carb, and it's just not a lot of veggie kinds of things.
yeah.
It is comforting, but it doesn't feel very healthful.
It doesn't feel good after either, right? Like I
Yeah.
ended up making well, spinach ravioli last night, which is, kind of spinach, but really it's ravioli. And I just felt horrible when I woke up this morning and I said, that's it. No more pasta.
Yeah. Well, we did pasta last night too. I
Yeah.
had no plans for dinner. I didn't know what we were going to do. And we had a call late in the afternoon, a little cocktail happy hour with our neighbors, the Kagans. And afterwards, I thought, let's just do a fettuccine alla Alfredo. So I did that, and it was very tasty, but it just weighs on you afterwards.
Yeah. Well, if I were going to get stuck because of a virus with anyone, I would want to get stuck with the two of you. Because you two are the best two cooks anywhere.
Thank you. I have been doing a lot of cooking,
Yeah.
and things that I don't make that often. Once again, a lot more of the comfort foods, big pot of beans, paella, lots of different. Oh, you'll love this. My mother was not a great cook. There are, though, a few things that she made that might not have been very healthful, but they were really tasty. One was and you're going to laugh at this, was a pasta dish with macaroni and tuna, a can of tuna, sliced olives with pimento, the regular Spanish olives, and mayonnaise.
Oh,
Now, everybody, the minute I say mayonnaise, they say, oh, oh, but it is so delicious.
really?
I made it for the kids when they were little at one point, and they just scarfed it up. I don't think I've made it since then, but I made it last week for us, and it was very, very delicious. I
Really?
know people have this thing about mayonnaise, but trust me, it's just eggs and milk.
So what did Dad say?
Oh, he loved it.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Well, he's the guy who used to make me peanut butter, lettuce, and mayonnaise sandwiches.
Oh, yes, he has those every day without the lettuce.
That's just disgusting. Like, he used to send me to school with that. Yuck.
Oh, well, I have to say, he introduced me to that when we went to his 25th anniversary at Exeter. And he took me to the grill, and I had a peanut between, which was it is a grilled peanut butter sandwich with mayonnaise, and unbelievably delicious, I have to say.
They
So I'm
served
a
they
fan.
served that at the school?
At the grill. Yeah.
Oh, is that where he picked it up? That's horrible.
I have to assume so. But I actually do like adding the mayonnaise to the peanut butter. It adds a little bit of viscosity and salt.
Wow. Wow.
But
Okay.
the other thing that I made from my mother's days was chicken with canned cream of soup on top. Stick it in the oven, and the soup, it just kind of melts and creates this wonderful sauce. So I made it a little more upscale. I chopped up some onions and some celery and some carrots, and I sauteed that. Then I put the chicken in, and then I put the soup over it. I have to tell you, one of the best things ever.
Right. Well, no, we used to have things like that when I was a kid. Like, so I guess, Campbell's soup got us all believing that that was one of the many ways you could use their product.
I think it started after World War II, where housewives would use prepared foods to create shortcuts and make something really tasty for the family without spending all day in the kitchen. I
Mm.
kind of think that's where it came from. And I mean, you must remember the onion dip that's made from Lipton, the dried Lipton onion soup.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
I don't know. I'm not even sure. I don't know that I've ever made it myself. And I don't know if you mix it with sour cream or sour cream.
Sour cream.
Pretty tasty though.
Yes.
But it's that kind of thing. Use a prepared food that already has a lot of seasonings in it and make that the base for something, a casserole or a meat dish or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, yuck. Now we've come full circle and we're back to spending all day in the kitchen.
Well, I after I left home, I went in the other direction of wanting to create everything from scratch. So I really never, while the kids were growing up, did those kinds of shortcuts, except on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
But I have to say, that chicken was so delicious. And then we had it for lunch the next day and just practically licked the plate. It was so good. Thank you.
So it's funny, but I remember this about you. I remember like one of my first memories of you. I don't know if it was the first, but it was when you were moving out of your apartment on Larkin Street. And so I was right. Okay. So this is a long and crazy story, people. No one's going to believe this. So you lived at 2656 Larkin. I grew up at 2656 Larkin, but time being what time is, we lived there at different times and like there's no intersection. So God, we had been gone, what, 15 years? I mean, I left there when I was, well, maybe 10. No, 5 years?
Well, let's think about this. You left Larkin Street when?
Just before my parents got divorced. So I would have been 10-ish. So that would be 1976-ish.
Okay.
So
and I moved in, I swear to God, a year and a half later.
So, and then you heard stories about the crazy architect with the no window coverings who ran around naked in his, in his house. And then that crazy architect used to get his car fixed where you worked, right?
Right.
So you were like you were the bookkeeper. He was the guy with the car that was always busted, and sometimes it was his fancy Lotus, and sometimes it was his, we call it the POS van.
Well, no, this was one of his construction vans.
Right. No, yeah, the POS van. Yeah. No,
is
but
that what you call it?
yeah, no, like POS stands for a piece of shit.
No, I get that, but
Oh.
I thought you meant his personal van as opposed to the, no windows in the back.
Oh, I didn't think there was a separation between work and personal. It felt like it felt like Laura and I were two kids rolling around in the back of a dirty van all the time. But anyway, so somehow you met, somehow you find out that you have this building in common.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still not when I met you. And what I remember was moving you out of there, and for whatever reason, I was really impressed with your kitchenware. you had these cool things that we never had. You had
Very esoteric.
Yes,
yeah.
Very esoteric tools. Things like a lemon zester. Who has a lemon zester? You.
And a mandolin.
And a mandolin for chopping your fingers off, and and a KitchenAid. That was the KitchenAid.
Oh yeah.
That one really got me. And I remember you said.
And a Cuisinart.
And the Cuisinart. Oh yeah, the Cuisinart. And this became like a life lesson for me. And you said, I believe in buying the best tool that you can possibly afford wherever you are in your life for anything, and that applied to anything. But you said, I always believe in buying the very best you can possibly afford. And I think you were talking about clothing, and you were talking about kitchen tools, and you're kind of talking about a lot of things. Uh,
Mhm.
but I remember, like, I took that in for some reason because it wasn't something I had heard before. And
Oh,
I thought
that's
it was
interesting.
such a beautiful, this is another very strange thing that you told me about how your underwear always matched. Like, and that was like, it was a kind of like self-care, personal love thing that I was fascinated by, because nobody was telling me stuff like that.
Interesting. Actually, uh, there was an era, an earlier era, when that was a bigger deal than it is today. That you would not only have a bra and panties that matched, but you would have a chemise or a slip that was all part of a suite of underwear. And so, yes, not only did they all match, but they matched whatever I was wearing that day.
Wow.
So if I was wearing black, then the suite was all black. If I was wearing gray, it was all gray. Whatever, pink, whatever. So I would have the many different colors. But in those days, and I'm thinking back in the 60s in particular,
Wow.
women always wore some kind of slip. And in the days of the mini skirt, of course, it couldn't be a regular slip because that was going to show. So it was a short chemise, and they were beautiful. I miss those days of the exquisite underwear. These days, the only place you see underwear like that is from a company like La Perla
Mm,
at extraordinary prices. But
right.
it used to be the common thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then we got into the more athletic looking underwear. It's a
Yeah.
different, it's a different thing.
A whole different world. Yeah.
But I do still believe that one should get the very best tools for whatever you're doing. They work better. You feel good about whatever the task is. And I think one is likely to take better care of them. You don't enter into the relationship with the tool that it's disposable. And when it's not working so well, you're going to throw it out. You just take care of it.
Right. Which
I
is
still
interesting.
have my KitchenAid.
Sorry?
I still have my KitchenAid.
Good point. Well, and it's funny, Sydney's that way about things. He doesn't treat anything like it's disposable. And a lot of Brazilians that I have met through him are the same. So they're always repairing things, or, he bought an old car, a Mercedes, and it was super, super cheap, but it wasn't working and nobody wanted it. And the guy couldn't sell it for more. And he's like, I'm going to fix it up and make it beautiful. And sure enough, he just like put so much energy and elbow grease into that thing. And, now he looks like, like a jerk running around in a really fancy Mercedes. Not really. No, he looks great in his like cool 80s car, but
Well,
someone.
and those cars are really workhorses. So if you can fix them up, they're really great. The Mercedes that I have had, I will say, they never failed me.
Mm,
They might have not run well at times, but they never stopped working.
yeah, it's interesting. Well, and it is sort of it's a German, ethos
Yep.
as well, right?
Yep.
So the other thing that was super interesting was, I remember it was probably after you and Dad got married and we were over at Greenwood Beach, and the sewing thing. Like you went crazy with the sewing thing, and
You were my inspiration.
I guess, I mean, I loved sewing in school, but I could barely, stitch anything together. I mean, yeah, I made some clothes, and actually I made 2 of my prom dresses. I'm proud of that.
Yes, and I remember those.
Yeah. Well, the flapper one was easy. You just sew a straight line. It's pretty pretty
Yeah,
simple.
but the straps weren't so easy.
The straps, yes, I insisted on having, what were they, like little crystal straps? Of course I did. But yeah, you set up that room and just went crazy. And you had like all the tools. You had the what do you call it? The overlock machine. And
The
I mean,
serger.
you took classes on like the minutia of sewing. I mean, you could be a freaking seamstress.
I guess I could have gone that way. I always liked sewing. My mother bought me, speaking of always buying the best, when
Hmm.
I was in high school, I wanted a sewing machine. We went looking and she bought whatever it was, the top of the line. It was an Italian sewing machine. It was extraordinarily expensive, which was a huge purchase for someone who really had no money. So while I don't remember, I'm sure she paid it off over time, over a long period of time. And it came with its own little cabinet, and it had cams, these little cams that you would put into it that would do different things. I think that was the big selling point for her. It was a very complicated machine, and it was very touchy, and it was difficult to work with. It was always hanging up somehow. That wasn't so much fun. But I remember making all kinds of things, including handbags and
Wow.
just I not a lot of clothes, more things things like the handbags and blankets and things like that.
So
And then
you were using your machine.
no, I got rid of it because it was just a pain. It was not an easy one to use. And I went with a Bernina, which is, I believe it's Swiss, I
Yeah.
think. That, like the Mercedes, absolute workhorse, not fancy, but it did everything you needed it to do, and it did it very well. And I still have it.
Wow.
I don't sew anymore, but maybe I should take it up again.
Did any of your kids ever sew? Did Danielle or Morgan, or I know Mark didn't.
Um, yeah, no, Mark obviously didn't. You know, Danielle did, I think, a little bit of it. Morgan was much more the creative force for those kinds of things, but what she did was a lot of costuming, you know, creating special characters. So she would use it for stuff like that.
Hmm.
And she bought her own sewing machine when she moved to Texas.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so remind me what year Danielle was born. That's the year you got married, or the year after you got married?
Yes, we were married October in 1980, and Danielle was born in August 81.
Okay. So you got married. I was 8th grade going into high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember I used to babysit her. I was what, 15 or so at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would babysit Danielle, and she would come to our soccer games, and she'd run around in her diapers, you know, and
Or half naked.
or half naked. And my whole team thought she was really cool. And it was very cool that anyone had a baby around, because like most teenagers, like at least back then, didn't have anybody with a baby running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was super funny, you know, a generation later when I had a baby running around and Danielle was babysitting Alex,
Uh-huh.
which we thought was pretty funny and interesting. And he's a, you know, if he had been around or in proximity, he could have been babysitting Danielle's baby.
That's true.
Very weird. So wait, so you have,
Generations, if
yeah,
you will.
yeah. It's so funny though, because I remember also, this is when I was first married. I think it's when we met the Reeds, and we were, you know, we were in Moscow and sort of flying all over the world and had this fabulous Citibank life. Um, and I remember Cindy asking me about the whole stepmother dynamic. And Yeah, so pretty much everywhere I went, people would say like, what do you mean you like your stepmother? Like, what do you mean you think your stepmother's like a sister? I'm like, aren't they all? Like that whole Cinderella wicked stepmother thing really doesn't resonate for me.
I don't know. I find it so attractive to call myself the wicked stepmother.
I know, right? But you can only do that when you're not, right? I mean,
I guess, yeah. Someone who was truly wicked would not want to be named wicked.
right, right. Well, and a big part of it for me, I think, was having I don't know, there's something about your perspective on the world that I really like. I mean, first of all, it's just crazy positive all the time. And you also take in information in a different way. I think because you grew up the way you did, which sounded really hard to me. And you grew up with this level of like appreciation and gratitude before we all called it that.
Hmm.
I don't know if you see it that way, but like you just didn't take anything for granted. Um, and well,
But
and one of my favorite qualities too is that, and it's funny, because I'm Scorpio, I have a lot of Aries friends, and I know you don't even know like what I'm talking about, but
I
but
just know Scarlett O'Hara was an Aries.
oh, that's interesting. I didn't know.
And, you know, the similarity we have is in dire situations, she would say, I'm not going to think about that today. I'll think about that tomorrow. And I do have this ability to put angst in a box, put it aside, and get a different focus in the moment. And I know not a lot of people can do that. You know, I just, it's like I reach a point where I realize if I let myself focus on this unhappiness or worry, whatever it is, panic, then I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do today, right now. So I just decide I'm not going to worry about that. I'll put it over here. And interestingly enough, many of those things just work themselves out. So
Most of them.
it's like with filing paperwork. You know, honestly, if you just stack it up, eventually you can just throw it away.
Actually, it's funny. My stepfather used to say that about his desk, that you could just take the whole thing and sweep it into the bin, and if it was really important, it would come back. And this was from a company perspective. Yeah.
Ah,
Um,
that's
so that
funny.
might be true. But the other thing I think this has always intrigued me about you is your journey to become an opera singer, your journey to sing, which was on track to become an opera singer, which is all about using your voice and speaking up. And I talk a lot in terms of chakras and energy and things like that. But a lot of people I know are blocked at the voice. And in a lot of ways, I have been blocked in my voice for most of my life. So I just swallowed shit when I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, in relation to that guy you're married to, otherwise known as my father.
Is it there?
It's right.
I'm listening.
Don't worry, Dad, we're not talking about you.
If you like.
No, I just wanted to give you a message there. You guys are having too much fun without me.
He's giving me a message.
Well, stick your face in there at least.
What's that?
Stick your face in there. Hi, Dad.
The naked architect.
I'm down.
No coverings on any of his windows.
Oh,
Think about that.
I wouldn't do it today.
But anyway, so a lot of what I saw you as able to do was to articulate things, and I didn't learn this until Alex was probably a kindergartner. And the day that Alex said, Mom, stop yelling at me, I burst into tears. And I thought, oh my God, my son just did the thing I could never do as a child, which was to say, stop yelling at me.
Oh.
Oh, go away, Dad.
Okay.
But you're good at that. But you're good at saying, like, you cannot treat me this way, or like, don't treat me this way. And I think, I mean, I know Danielle better than I know Mark or Morgan, but I know that Danielle got that from you. Maybe not in relation to him, but in relation to her partners later in life, saying, like, you cannot treat me this way. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Danielle is really strong.
but that's you gave her that. And I wonder if you see it as connected to voice and speaking up, or if those things are not related to you.
I never thought about that. And I grew up in a house where we didn't really speak our feelings. I think my sister in particular is very reticent to talk about her feelings. I developed that more in life after college with friends that I had, and I got a higher comfort level expressing my feelings. And I think one of the things that was a watershed moment for me was when I got married, because my whole life changed in that moment. And I realized I got more clarity on what was important to me. Instead of always being, and I know you'll appreciate this because you have a similarity here, always feeling that one of my jobs in life was to make other people happy. You know what I mean?
Right.
That I reached a point at where I realized I now had a whole new dynamic in my life and that I needed to protect that. So, for instance, and not to rag on my mother, but she had a very hard life, and she focused everything in her life on her two girls. But there was a price to pay for my sister and me, which was we then owed her emotionally to take care of her and all of the things that she wanted for the rest of her life. And I don't mean things in terms of anything monetary or physical, but there was a very strong emotional demand. And when I married your dad, all of that shifted. And all of a sudden I realized this was now my primary life, and my mother was outside that immediate circle. And while I was going to always want to be a good daughter, I was not going to let her run my life or tell me what I or my husband should be doing. And that really changed things for me. I think if I hadn't had a very overbearing mother, I might not have felt that so clearly, but it was absolutely a watershed moment in my life that defined what I was going to let other people do.
Mm-hmm. So I remember at some point you said, and I guess you've said it a few times, that you knew when you met him that you were giving up your career as an opera singer. Like it was just never going to happen. And maybe you just knew that about marriage generally, or maybe it was because of him, like you couldn't have the career of an opera singer plus like marriage and family.
I wouldn't say it was the marriage entirely that made me feel that way. I'm not sure I really had the courage to pursue a singing career. And I say that realizing that from my earliest memories, singing was very important to me. It was just a huge part of my existence and a source of great happiness. And I was singing throughout my early life. I was in every chorus one could be in. I was in every production at school. I was in summer stock productions. It just gave me great joy. And I knew that was what I wanted to do. I'm not sure that I ever would have had a successful career, but I do know that after college, I was now in the position of figuring out, okay, what do I do? First and foremost, I had to eat and I had to have a roof over my head. So I had to get a job. And it would have taken an enormous amount of courage on my part to take a chance at some sort of career. And I don't know that it would have been opera. I thought to myself, I can't see myself having the kind of existence where you go from one city to another looking for a gig. And if you're going to work in your own community, what does that look like? Are you singing in a smoky bar? Yeah, that's not going to work. I'm not going to go there. So, you know, I think I took the path for self-preservation instead of just taking the leap and trying to do what I'd always wanted to do. But definitely as one half of a marriage, I cannot see that it would be easy to have a career and also have a marriage with children. And the minute I met your dad, that's the first time I had ever thought about having kids, but I very much wanted them at that point.
Huh.
So,
Did it
yeah,
influence you at all that he had two amazing kids already? Or?
oh yes. I thought you were amazing, but I wanted more, you know, the more the merrier.
We didn't think, no, I just meant, you know, like, oh, this guy, his kids turn out all right. So, so we'll be good.
Well, yes, I did. There actually were thoughts that I had. Number one, that you were great kids. So that said to me, he's a good father.
Mm.
And also that, hey, he's been all through all of these challenges of being a parent. So it's cool. I've got someone to rely on every time something happens. And the funny thing is, all of you kids, when you've got a challenge, who do you call?
The guy with all the answers.
Every single thing. It doesn't matter if it's a medical question or, you know, I think of the couple of times Mark had kind of a household emergency. One was an apartment he was renting in Washington, D.C. that apparently someone upstairs left the water running or they had some pipe break or something. And there was a leak. And of course, he calls your dad asking, what do I do? What do I do? And another one was a time when his, I don't know if it was a smoke alarm or a carbon dioxide or monoxide alarm, but it was going off and he was very concerned about what do I do? And of course, your dad is right there with, okay, this is what you got to do. This is what you have to check. And I sit there in bed next to him thinking, oh yeah, nobody ever calls me with those questions.
I remember when Alex had a fever, he was a year and a half, maybe. We were in Princeton. Alex had a fever. I was alone in the house. And did I call a doctor? Did I call emergency? No, I called Dad. And he like pulls out his Harvard medical book or whatever that book is that he swears by. Yeah, he's just like, he's got a lot of information.
He knows stuff.
He knows stuff.
I don't know how he keeps from having his head explode because he has so much data in that brain of his. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he can remember a meeting that is coming up the next day or what he had for lunch last week or, you know, those kinds of things, they don't stick. But all of this esoteric stuff that I said to him very early on, I really don't need to remember that. I only need to remember to ask you, and I know you'll have the answer.
Yes. He's like,
And even if he doesn't have the answer, he gives you an answer, and it always sounds so good that you rely on it.
yes, you taught me that too. You said, you know, your dad doesn't always know the answer. He just delivers the answer with conviction, and therefore you believe it's the answer.
But it's not totally pulled out of the air.
No,
It's
never.
it's based on the very broad and deep knowledge that he's come up with over the years. So it's all of the knowledge and the common sense, and he comes up with something that's probably right. He just doesn't absolutely know that it's right. But
Well, and also he doesn't know how to use the internet at all. So he has to be his own personal Google.
yeah, right. So I have to tell you, you know, he's not a technology person at all. And he has taken over the years great pleasure in making fun of everybody who's sitting on their phone, you know, that they're just like this all day long. So I loaded the New York Times onto his phone a few weeks ago.
And now he's hooked.
And now he gets into bed and he's like this.
Oh my goodness. He doesn't even have contacts in his phone.
No.
I mean,
no.
I tried to teach him that he could just speak into the phone and say, call Susan, and it would work because I put your number in there. He dials everyone's number every single time.
But he has an Apple Watch.
Yeah. For what? Keeping the time? It's very weird. It's very weird.
I dialed him the other day and his phone was in the kitchen and he was down in the studio and I heard it ring and I thought, oh, okay, well, he's not going to get that. And then later on he said, oh yeah, I saw you called on my watch. Because I don't have an Apple Watch. This stuff is all new to me.
Right. So another thing I thought was super funny, interesting is when we came by, I don't know, was it last year? And Annette and Hans came with us to the house. And I can't remember if Sydney had seen the house before or not, but I remember Annette's reaction was just like completely overwhelmed by the amount of art that is just in every nook and cranny of that house. And, you know, the amount of creative juice flowing through the place. I mean, she's so sensitive to energy and things like that. And she was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. She's like, I understand you, Tanya, so much better now that I see this. And I sort of thought, really? Like, because, you know, your normal is your normal, right?
Right.
And then you've been living with, you know, that level of Mr. Creative and all of the creative things that both of you do for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Does it affect you? Do you feel it? Do you notice it? Do you just like, oh yeah, this is just normal?
Affects me. It gives me joy.
Mm-hmm.
I really like living with art. I cannot imagine a life of bare walls. I just can't. And that to me would just be so devoid of any kind of emotion in life.
Yeah. And I noticed your neighbors the Kagans have a lot of art too, really nice art on their walls.
Yes, they do. Some of it is your dad's too. Yes, that's probably one of the things that we like about them, that they appreciate and enjoy art in their lives too.
Yeah.
And I don't ever become jaded by any of it. I look at it every day as I pass and I take great pleasure in it. And I love to continue. Obviously, your dad continues to paint, but we love continuing to collect other artists' work.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward every year to the Sausalito Art Festival, which sadly is not happening this year,
Mm.
and the Academy of Art University faculty art auction that we go to every year. I love going and bringing home new treasures.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like, you know, if I were stuck on a desert island and I could only bring a few things, one of those things would be a book full of pictures of art, so that, you know, I couldn't maybe have the original. I could have more if I had a book, a big thick book.
Or perhaps books of some of those artists whose work we truly could never afford.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I call Dad the high class hoarder, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I call myself a high class hoarder too. It's just, what can you do?
I
And
feel bad for you kids who are going to have to figure out what to do with all of this stuff one day.
yeah. So how do you feel about the whole mortality thing that's, in your face right now because of the virus? Do you guys feel like vulnerable? You guys don't seem vulnerable. I mean,
I think anyone is vulnerable. I don't think it's just one demographic or age group or color. I think the thing that is scary to me is, oh no, I'm coughing. You can't see it, so you don't know what is safe. But I'm 70, your dad is about to be 80. One of the things that makes this quarantine okay in our lives is that we have each other. If I was in this house, although I've never minded being alone, but if I was in this house for weeks on end all by myself, I would be very depressed. I would get very sad. Even though each of us doing our own thing during the day. I go to my office, he goes down to his studio. We have a regular work day. So we see each other for breakfast in the morning, we go to work, he comes up, we maybe have lunch together, and then we see each other again at dinner time. It's not like we're spending the entire time in the same room or rooms with each other, but there's that knowing the other is here and knowing that we are not alone in this house. That makes a huge difference for me. So I feel bad for the people who are, number one, you mentioned in one of your videos, the fact that you have space. We have space, we have space around the house, we have a beautiful environment, we have a beautiful view. And the thought of being in a tiny little apartment by oneself is very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have the woods to go walk in. I don't go to the beach because I think too many people are doing that, but I go to woods where I don't see anybody for an hour or two. And that brings me back to a more centered feeling. Because yeah, I can get a little crazy distracted right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But I have to say, it is scary. The scariest thing for me is the thought that your dad would get sick more than that I would get sick.
right.
That's the most frightening thing at this point.
Right.
Or even worse, that we would both
get
sick. And honestly, if one of us got it, the other undoubtedly would.
Right.
And what that means to all of you kids.
Right. Who
So
all live in completely different places. Like, well, I guess Laura's close to you, but whew, your kids are everywhere. Let's see. You have Mark is in Boston-ish. Morgan's in Texas. Danielle she's in Tucson?
Outside of Tucson,
Outside of
Sahuarita.
Okay. So yeah, nobody could get there at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mostly try not to think about that because I would freak out about, you know, Alex being so far away. But I've just decided we're all good here. We're okay. We'll be okay.
Well, so I'm being very good about keeping us in. The first few days of the quarantine, I took a walk along the Tiburon bike path with two of my staff members, one who lives here in Tiburon and the other who drove over from Oakland. And that was fun. And we were being very good about, I wouldn't say we were staying 6 feet apart, but you know, we had space between us. And your dad after that said, you know what, I don't know that I want you to do that again. And then the next day, his friend called him to ask, hey, you want to go out for a walk? And I said, wait a minute, really? You're going to go out for a walk, but I can't go out for a walk. But he has stopped even that.
Ah, okay. Well, you know how he is. He doesn't think rules apply to him.
Yes, there's a little bit of that, yes.
Yeah, just a wee bit.
But thankfully, he stopped going to the gym. And of course, then the gym had to close. But in the beginning of this, he kept going to the gym. And Mark would call me on the side and say, you have to tell him to stop. This is serious and he's got to stop. So I think he finally got religion about it and is he's perfectly okay with just staying in.
Oh, I know. I'm going to do one of these calls with him, and I know it's going to have to be from his studio because it's like his little happy place right now.
His hidey hole, his man cave.
His man cave. Man cave is like a pulsating art museum of some kind.
So the funny thing, speaking of hoarding, I remember when he built that studio, walking into that big empty room thinking, oh my goodness, this place is huge.
Right.
And now I walk in there and I can barely find a place to walk. And it's not that it's not junk. None of it is junk. It's all the art. And his dad's, two of his dad's big partner desks, they take up a lot of the room. But you put those in there and the easel. Oh, and he has the rowing machine in there. And then artwork everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Yeah. And boxes and boxes of clippings from magazines and things that are ideas that he wants to save. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
But this is what makes him happy.
Yeah.
And this is what he has wanted to do his entire life. Not that he hasn't enjoyed being an architect. I think he just always wondered, what would my life have been like had I pursued this thing that I really loved and hadn't had to worry about supporting a family and paying the mortgage and all of those other things.
And he'd have to give up you and the 5 kids, and then what do you have?
Not much that's worth having, I'm just gonna say.
Not much that's worth having. Yeah. Did you ever think you would have 3 kids?
Ever, as in.
I don't know. Did you think, oh, I'm going to have a big family with lots of kids?
I never even thought about having kids until I met your dad.
Oh.
I did not see myself as a mom.
I didn't see myself as a mom until the second he came out. Totally. I'm going to say like, it took about 5 minutes and then my life changed.
Here you go. Instant momhood.
Yeah. I was not on the gotta have kids bandwagon at all.
Well, I just never wanted, and he never thought about it. It wasn't on my radar screen. And I think that everything had to do with meeting someone who I just loved so much that I wanted to have children with him.
Interesting. I always say that I think the world is divided really only between people with children and people without. and I don't know if maybe that's just my lens, my bias, whatever, but I honestly couldn't understand the big deal until I had one. It just, it's like, I hate to like equate it to this, but it's a little bit like picking up other dogs' poop at the dog park. You just don't want to. It's just, you can pick up your own dog's poop, but you really can't pick up other people's. It's hard. That's how I felt that way about kids. Like, I don't know. I don't know about kids. And then I had one, and like it just shifted my perspective. I'm going to say I had one friend, Karen, whose birthday is tomorrow, I believe.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Was my one friend who, when she had, so her wedding was the second wedding I ever photographed. And when she had Oscar, her oldest, she said, "Hey, you want to hold him?" And like puts him in my hands. And it was the first, I mean, I'd held Danielle and babysat her, but that's different. That was a different relationship. This was the first kind of, oh, this could be my child holding this child.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I thought, oh, look, they don't break. Like, oh, they're kind of cute. Maybe.
Hmm. Well, I hate to bring it to an end, but I actually have another.
You have a meeting?
Starting in 5 minutes.
How exciting.
You're welcome to join. It's just the kids.
Oh, yay. All right. Well, hopefully we've said something here that they will find of value and wisdom, and it will be forever for your grandchildren to watch out there in the ether world. But thanks for coming on my little show.
Fun. And I wouldn't mind doing it again at some
Absolutely.
point.
Okay, awesome. You can be a repeat guest.
Okay. Big hugs.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank
Love to you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.